In 1982, executives told Toni Basil she was too old to be a cheerleader on camera. She wore her real high school uniform anyway and shot the Mickey video in one take. It hit #1 and changed pop culture forever. For decades, Mickey played at every football game, every commercial, every nostalgia playlist. But she got pennies. In 2017, she discovered her music rights had been shuffled between offshore companies like Poker Chips. By the time she won in court, she was 78 years old. This is the story of a hit song that made millions for everyone except the woman who created it. Toni Basil wasn't born in a hospital or even at home. She was born backstage on top of costume trunks during a matinee show in a crumbling old theater in Philadelphia on September 22, 1943. Her mother, Irene, was performing when the labor started, and the show had to stop. Her father, Michael, was playing music in Atlantic City when he got the telegram. He walked out mid-song, left his orchestra behind, and hitchhiked all the way back. The family name was Basilla, but Ellis Island changed it. Nobody talked much about the rumors of her grandfather's ties to protection rackets in Chicago. Irene's side came from vaudeville acts that dangled from ropes and leapt through the air for pennies. They barely made it. They were poor, always hungry, and always moving. Toni cried for the first time, just as the Theet's pipe organ let out a low, eerie note. Some backstage folks said it was a curse. Others called it fate. Months before that chaotic birth, Irene had done something most people wouldn't believe. 8 months pregnant and visibly ill, she still took the stage at the Palace Theater in Chicago, performing a 25-feet aerial somersault while spinning through the air, with her legs swollen and her stomach heavy. Twice during practice, she nearly fell. Her cousin Eddie Fay would later admit she'd taken black market amphetamines just to push through the pain. At the climax of the act, Irene had to catch a 30-pound sandbag midair. The force of it hitting her was enough to draw blood. She finished the act and collapsed, bleeding through her costume. 6 weeks later, Toni was born early. That performance wasn't just dangerous. It was the moment that hardwired into Toni a need to perform, even if it hurt. Between 1948 and 1953, Toni didn't have a home. The Basilata family moved from city to city, living backstage in converted dressing rooms barely large enough to lie down. At the Fox Theater in Detroit, Toni shared space with circus animals and got ringworm from elephant bedding. Her bed in Cleveland was a tile-floored basement that used to be a morgue. She ate mostly popcorn and stale hot dogs left over from concession stands. In 5 years, she changed schools 23 times, never long enough to make a real friend. She learned survival from burnout performers backstage. Not reading or math, but how to dodge spotlights, fix costumes, and fake confidence. By 1949, they were desperate. Michael couldn't find music gigs. They were almost $900 in debt and feared the worst from local loan sharks. So, Irene came up with an idea. She sent 6-year-old Toni out to sell candy and programs in theater lobbies. Technically illegal, but they needed the money. One night at the Palmer House Hotel, Toni danced for rich guests who tossed coins at her feet. She made $23, but got painful blisters on both feet. Later, Irene wrote it off as volunteer work to avoid getting in trouble. But theater managers knew, and instead of reporting them, they used it to underpay the entire family for years. Then something happened that changed everything. During a rehearsal in February 1951, Irene forgot her steps. The music stopped. Toni, just 7, ran on stage and filled the silence with a tap routine she had memorized in secret. The crowd stood up cheering. Lou Schwartz, a booking agent in the audience, offered her a solo contract on the spot, $75 a week. Irene, watching from the wings, slapped her hard across the face and accused her of stealing the spotlight. From that moment, their roles flipped. Toni was the performer bringing in money. Irene was the jealous one hiding shoes and whispering to others that her daughter had an attitude problem. Michael stayed quiet but started to treat Toni like an investment. Nothing between them was the same again. In 1950, the family moved to Las Vegas. Her father had landed a regular orchestra job at the Sahara Hotel for $125 a week. By day, Toni went to school. By night, She was in the smoky Congo room watching dancers practice between rounds of poker and cocktails. Sometimes she rehearsed splits between slot machines, while cocktail waitresses in feathers stepped over her. At 8 years old, she saw a man get beaten up in a casino hallway. It didn't scare her. It just taught her not to trust anyone too much. At Las Vegas High School, Toni tried to make cheerleading serious. She added stunts that nobody had attempted before, pushing her body to the limit. Some players made fun of her, calling her routines too girly. During a homecoming game, she fell midair and smashed her ankle badly. Her mother had ended her dancing career after a similar accident. Toni showed up the next week anyway, limping, her ankle wrapped in stolen athletic tape. Money was always a problem. Between 1958 and 1960, her father lost $8,000 gambling, almost triple his annual salary. Toni once found IUS in his violin case and realized dance lessons might stop. So, she began stashing coins she found around the casino, keeping them in a buried coffee can behind their apartment. She paid for lessons herself, $5 a session. One Christmas, her father pawned her mother's ring to pay off debts. Nobody talked about it, but Toni remembered every detail. She started sneaking into Sahara rehearsals through a side entrance, hiding behind curtains to watch the dancers. One day, while practicing moves she'd copied from the lead performer, she heard her parents screaming through the wall. Her mom was threatening divorce. Her dad was talking about money he owed. She cleaned up blood from where he'd punched the wall. That night convinced her that financial freedom wasn't optional. It was the only path forward. She graduated in 1961, top of her class. Instead of a cap and gown, she wore her cheerleader uniform. Her speech was called Dancing Through Conformity, and she used it to criticize the system. UNLV had offered her a full scholarship, but she turned it down. She'd saved up $400 from side gigs. Her plan was simple: go to Los Angeles and dance. That same year, she tried to run away and auditioned for a burlesque show on Fremont Street. Someone told her dancers they earned $200 a week. She was 16, using a fake ID. The talent scout said she could start that night. Her father found her before the show and pulled her out. He was furious. She never forgave him for not letting her make her own decisions, but people in town never forgot it either. Toni Basil wasn't afraid of risk, even if it meant scandal. At 18, she got cast as a dancer on a local Vegas TV show. After 3 episodes, she was fired. Producers said she was too provocative. Broke and embarrassed, she hitchhiked to LA with $47 and a small suitcase. She slept on floors, juggled part-time jobs, and auditioned every chance she got. In 1963, she got work on a Rat Pack film. She wasn't credited, but she danced opposite Frank Sinatra. Off camera, Sinatra wouldn't leave her alone. Crew noticed, but nobody said anything. He had too much power. She dealt with it by keeping her head down and never being alone with him. By 1964, she was dancing on Shindig, a rock show that ran on ABC. Backstage was mayhem. Musicians were popping pills to stay awake, and fights between bands sometimes broke out during tapings. One time, she got caught in the middle of a fist fight and twisted her ankle again. That same year, she was hired on Viva Las Vegas and shared scenes with Elvis. His entourage tried isolating her during breaks. One of his men invited her to a private audition. She knew what that meant and declined. It wasn't the first time she'd had to dodge that kind of trap. Later that year, during the Tammy show, she found herself in the middle of a different kind of tension, this time about race. James Brown was furious that he was performing before the Rolling Stones, seeing it as a slap in the face. Toni was one of the few people he trusted. She stayed out of it, but the experience taught her just how deep the industry's racial divide really was. In another job that same year, while filming a beach party movie, her costume ripped mid-dance and exposed more than intended. Gossip columns twisted the story into something it wasn't. And for years, directors assumed she was fine with party girl roles. That one accident nearly derailed her credibility as a serious choreographer. Toni Basil's big break came when she danced as a giantess in Village of the Giants in 1965. The movie only had a $75,000 budget, but it became a cult classic, especially because of her go-go dance with a young Ron Howard. Behind the scenes, things were messy. Parties at the Beverly Hills Hotel got wild. Basil said she once saw a teenage extra collapse on set, probably from drugs. It shook her. She began keeping her distance from the scene that was quickly turning reckless. Still, the film earned $1.2 million and gave her the kind of fame that opened doors. But those doors weren't always easy to walk through. In 1967, she signed on for The Cool Ones, another dance-focused film. It had a big studio budget, $2.3 million.
But it was a disaster. She quit before filming was finished, walking away from $15,000, which would be worth over $140,000 today. Rumors said one of the producers crossed the line during rehearsals. After that, word got around Hollywood that she was difficult, and she stopped getting film offers for a while. The movie tanked anyway, barely making back $800,000 airs. But her choice became legend among other dancers. She was one of the first to say no to how women were treated in the business. Then came Head in 1968. The Monkees were trying to shake off their pop image with something edgy, and they brought in Basil for a trippy dance scene with Davy Jones. But the set was chaos. The band was fighting, gear was flying, and Basil had to choreograph around people storming off set. One of the fights even shut down filming for a full day. When the movie came out, it flopped hard, just $16,000 in its first run. But her dance stood out. Years later, she said it felt like psychedelic hell, but it gave her ideas that she would later use when directing her own music videos. She appeared briefly in Easy Rider in 1969, playing a brothel worker in New Orleans. The budget was small, just $400,000, but the shoot was intense. Dennis Hopper, who directed the film, was using cocaine and brought real guns to set. Basil remembered being scared during one scene when he started improvising lines and waving a weapon that wasn't in the script. They filmed at a real brothel, and it took 2 days to get the footage right. She only earned $300 for the job, but the film blew up, earning $60 million. Still, she never forgot the fear of that shoot, and she warned others to stay away from directors who were out of control. Her next big film was 5 Easy Pieces in 1970 with Jack Nicholson. The movie was filmed in Oregon and California and had a budget of $1.6 million. Nicholson was totally doing method acting, and it made things tense. Basil had to work in close proximity with him during some of the most emotional scenes, and she later said his flirtations felt more real than scripted. She shut it down, and director Bob Rafelson backed her